I prefer to take a decentralized approach to the intros. So I'm going to pass the mic around and let our three panelists introduce themselves. But first, I just want to say hi. My name's Corey. Been in the space for a few years, organizing various events, and really excited to talk about crops today with this amazing crew. So please, Binji.
Hi, I'm Binji. I work at the Ethereum Foundation in the realm of trying to help demystify and explain what crops is for folks, and hope to get to be able to do that today.
Hey, I'm Lefteris. I've been in the field like way too long. I'm the founder of Rodkey.
Hi everyone, my name's Nick. I am head of governance at a project called GITO on Solana at the moment. I worked in Ethereum for several years, trying to live the DAO dream with great pain and suffering. So I'll talk about that a little bit, I think.
Great. So let's kick this off. We had crops introduced this year by the Ethereum Foundation, and it's, I think, incited quite an active conversation in the community. And I know that each of you may have a little bit of a different take on things. So we wanted to kick off a conversation today just to have an open conversation around, what it means, where it might be leading, some maybe various opinions on the effectiveness of it. So maybe we could start off with, I don't know, if Binji, if you want to take it away and kind of give your take on what crops is.
Yeah. Okay. I think first of all, crops is definitely not maybe coined by the EF mandate in a way, but I think it's something that's been in existence throughout throughout all of humanity. I mean, censorship, resistance, open source, privacy, security. In my mind, it's like a freedom framework more than it is anything else. I think if you go all the way back in time, to give you an example, like Tutankhamun, the very famous Egyptian pharaoh, was actually trying to be erased. Right? People were trying to erase him from history, and he was discovered later by chance. Right? This is something where censorship resistance, the act of defiance, the act of being able to preserve something even if people want to silence you, the act of being able to stand up, and the idea of having a freedom framework has been pervasive across our species, across history, across the universe as a whole thing. So crops is definitely a coin term, but it's just been around a lot. And I think to me it's we're taking that to the digital plane. Right? The truth of the world is we're getting more digital. This is you can't really deny that. We're spending more time online, more of our values online, our money's going online, our identity's going online, right? And we deserve to have the same freedom substrate that we do in the real world as we move more digital. And crops is a way that empowers that and allows us to continue fighting for it, and allows us to continue building decentralized substrates that last, are pervasive, exist, are censorship resistance, are open source, focus on privacy, focus on security. So crops is something that's always existed. I think it's now there's a coined term, I guess, within the realm of what we're doing. But it's something that I think is just another chapter in this long fight for freedom that humanity's been fighting for throughout its whole existence.
Crops, I also kind of have been working on software that is defined as crops, but to be honest, I first heard of it from the mandate as a term. I don't think I have ever seen it before. To me, crops are really, really important. This is what I have devoted my career so far on. I have been building Rodkey, which is kind of based on the ideals of crops. So it's open source. The idea is sovereign data, so you have your data saved in your system. Tries to focus on privacy. It's not for the faint of heart, though, because it's a very, very difficult road. And this is something that I think I also try to give feedback to the foundation people when they share the mandate that mentions the crops as a definition. That it's a really, really nice term, but we need to also be more practical and try to find a silver lining between crops and reality / sustainability / what the users actually want. So I would like to maybe talk about this stuff today. Crops is really valuable, really good, but how we can utilize what the attributes that crops wants to teach us, but at the same time, bring it to the masses and not just be 10 people in a room that are using and advertising crops.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've just said. I think it was the term was coined in the mandate, but I think it was Bankless David who's just like decided to exit Ethereum recently and FUD it on the way out for some reason. But he was saying, yeah, why the real spirit of crypto is gone or something like that. And actually the Ethereum, or rather the spirit of Ethereum, and actually it's the opposite. It's actually a articulation of what the spirit of crypto is in an acronym, effectively. It is about these things. That's the point of it all. And as to why we're talking about it now and why I think there's been a very interesting, from a governance perspective, is kind of my general lens on things, I think the Ethereum Foundation has decided to effectively go all in on this, right? It's like pot committed. They don't have, I work in Solana now. The Solana Foundation has loads more money. The Ethereum Foundation doesn't have a huge chunk of its pre-mine left, right? It has to concentrate, it has to focus its efforts, and that's where it's doing. As to why now, I think there's a kind of, the only way I can describe it is a kind of a great evil that's arising in the world at the moment that is deeply troubling. And it's a kind of quest for control of systems that are getting out of hand, basically. So just today, if you follow me on Twitter, you'll know I just spend all day ranting into the void about the UK government because they're fucking insane. And today they announced, every day they announce some insane shit, and then it's more insane than you thought it was going to be. Like today, we're going to ban social media. Well, for under 16s, how are you going to do that? Well, we have to ID everyone to use the internet. We have to KYC to use the internet now. But it's not just that. We're going to add internet curfews for 17-year-olds and shut the internet down at night. So presumably they go to bed and read books instead. The 17-year-old kids, the fuck are they thinking? It's just nuts. So it's all going insane, right? And this is the time to focus on these technologies because someone has to do it. And I think what's happening is Ethereum has kind of writ large has kind of assumed the responsibility of doing it. That's kind of my lens on it, anyway.
So you see it as a good thing?
It's a necessary thing. It's I've been worried about this stuff for a long time. I'm just when I got into cryptography about 15 years ago, I was teaching it, and I came as a physicist into mathematics for a bit and taught number theory, and the way I got my kids interested in number theory was through cryptography. And when you get into cryptography, you take on an adversarial mindset, right? In order to protect secrets online, you have to think in an adversarial game design, which got me into mechanism design, game theory, all these sort of things. And are totally incapable of seeing the adversarial game that is about to ensue. And it spirals, right? So we're going to ban kids from using social media, but oh, look, they just use VPNs, so let's ban VPNs. And oh, the VPN guys aren't complying, so let's do more insane shit. And before you know it, we've all got an orb to use the internet, right? So we don't have any choice. We just have to do it, basically.
Well, then maybe another question is Lefteris, you said something interesting about maybe the gap between what Crops is putting out there and reality. Do you have maybe more to share on that? What your take is on the tangible impact that Crops would actually have in reality? Is it just ideological, or how do you see it actually playing out?
So it's not so much about ideology, but about okay, so let's say the people in this room would be very interested in crops, and they would download and use whatever you put out there. But you want a lot more people than this. So that's what I mean by reality, being able to appeal to the masses. If you tell them it's... so they will ask you, why would I use it? It's open source. What does that mean? I don't care. You tell them that means that you can audit the code and understand. They're like blah blah blah. I don't understand. I can't audit the code. I don't get it. Okay, it gives you privacy. What does that mean? I don't have anything to hide. This is what they will respond. I have had this conversation too many times. Then censorship resistance will go close to privacy. They will say, I don't have anything to hide, I don't care. Then I had this conversation happen with one person who later got actually affected by a leak and got, how do you call it, a post letter at home from the letter leak, that they, like trying to scam them. Only then did that guy realize, oh, shit, it's actually important. I have to be careful about this. So what I'm trying to say is that the only effective way that I have personally found to advertise about privacy or about data sovereignty is for someone to actually get hurt by it. And this is a terrible way of advertising or pushing something, because you're using the stick and not the carrot, and this doesn't scale at all. Like, we have never managed to work to make this work. For data sovereignty, the same thing works. You're using a SaaS platform, and then suddenly they go down and they had no export, so you lost all your data. This has happened to people, and then only they realize, oh, no, I need to be careful. I need to always question, where is my data saved? How can I export it? Can I use it somewhere else? But the people who care are, at least from what I've seen, they're only the people who have been hurt by this, have been affected once. And we can't just rely on this. We would need to find ways to advertise crops that would appeal to the masses. And this is the gap, one of the gaps. The other is funding, but let's go there later. So the gap of why would I use crops as an average user? And this is the question that I actually wanted the EF guys to try and put in the mandate, but it was difficult. They couldn't find, because this is a very difficult question to answer. How would you make people use crops? Not just because they are the good thing, but because they will actually benefit from it. Because in the end, that's also what people would end up paying for. So this is like what I mean by the gap between reality and the ideology that crops wants to put out there.
I can try to answer that. I think I agree with you. I think you need use cases. You need people to actually be using this stuff to be proliferated. Like values without a product or an identity are just like stories, and stories are impactful. Stories have like gone throughout existence for humans. Like, we live off stories, we give each other stories, but products matter too, right? And I think it's important to also like really create this like precondition of like, crops is not a wall that we're building around everybody, and it's like we're in our crop circle. It's a floor that can lift everybody up, right? Even people who don't want it, even people who may never think about censorship resistance or give a fuck about open source, like, this substrate will exist and fight for that, and will be there, and will be a sanctuary for all of these things, no matter what, no matter who you are. So there's importance in that. But on the flip side of this, it's like, okay, who's using it? Like, what are the actual products being used? Like, is anyone actually like utilizing this stuff? And when we dig down like what's happening on Ethereum right now, is there is a lot of usage around crops principles. It's just like said in a different way, and it's a lot of like language in a way. I'd argue, like, for example, people are like, the institutions are in crypto now and stuff. The institutions don't really use the word decentralization. They say like minimizing counterparty risk, and for them that's their version of crops. And having these properties like censorship resistance, all of these things, help them kind of maintain that minimization of counterparty risk. So like, it's a wording thing, and I think that's a communication thing that I'm excited to explore more. But on the flip side, when it comes to products, I think it's really important to think of crops as not just necessarily an Ethereum thing only. This is something that's been in existence throughout human history. It's what's allowed for cultures, nations, et cetera, to form, is like this resilience of being censorship resistant, and continue fighting even when you're trying to be silenced. And now we're building technology that like kind of carries on that torch. But there's things like Signal that exist, right? There's things like BitChat that exists. These are all crops tools. There's a lot of like brothers and sisters and everyone in between who's like been a part of this. And I think this is Ethereum's chance to maybe meet those people and build other sort of products around it. One thing on like direct where I think crops can actually have a really interesting product-led thing that actually like everyday people might be interested in using is I generally sense this tide where people are sick of like the current internet. People are saying like the dead internet and all of these, like people are craving human connection. And there's been some interesting ideas circulating around like peer-to-peer social, things around that lens, which is like inherently kind of like you're using crops technology to build something that's consumer-facing. And there's some people working on these sort of projects. To give you a direct example, just to name drop one, actually I don't know their name, they're just hacking on it. But it's like, if you know BitChat, it's like Bluetooth-powered mesh networks. Personal story, I'm from Nepal. The internet was shut off by our government at one point, and people were actually downloading BitChat to communicate. Right? BitChat basically uses Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi to communicate, and you create this mesh network. But that's a wartime app, right? That's a wartime app that uses crops. That's a crops app technically. How do you make that an engaging, interesting app in the peacetime world? Well, you can actually use these properties and be like, more and more people are sick of connecting with random strangers online all the time. People want to make connections in their local space. So if you create like a Bluetooth mesh network app that's like a way to connect with people near you, that's not just a messaging app, but it's like almost like a dating app, for example, that uses Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi. You can actually come up with these like interesting creative concepts of like P2P social, which could be fun. And I think we're in an era where you can like one-shot these front ends using AI or whatever coding tools you want to use to actually like experiment with them at scale. But we have to fight for the substrate to be crops such that you can do so. And I think like in terms of the reality side, this is like a broader question for crypto as a whole. It's like, what are the front ends that people are using? Like what's the general value people are providing, like crypto is providing for people today? And I think we're in an era where you can actually create more and more of that, especially on the front end layer. But that's only relevant if the substrate is actually like as crops as possible. Yeah, there's a couple ideas there that's circulating that I think we're in the right mixture of like perfect storm where people want to be closer to the people around them, so that's P2P in a way. People want to try new apps. It's easier than ever to build new apps. And now it's easier than ever to build new apps on a fully like decentralized substrate, aka Ethereum, which will always fight for crops and will always like try to push this torch forward, in being one conduit for censorship resistance, open source, privacy, and security.
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think we're kind of both wrestling with, or we're all wrestling here with, how do we make it a reality? I think you mentioned like the pragmatics of this being really important. I think Pola told me yesterday, all you need to do is add the word imaginary onto the word after it to make it academic. But the crops imaginary, if you like, would be, they're crops, right? So we've got to grow them. So someone's got to plant the seeds, someone's got to water it, and it's going to take time. Where's the resources coming from? There's basic fundamental resourcing of getting this done. I think a big part of the problem is, Lefteris was telling me before, it's been challenging for Rotkey because people are just leaving crypto. Just like previous subscribers to his open source app that was making it sustainable are just leaving because crypto is so depressing and just dull at the moment, right? That I think we've forgotten how to have fun. And it was like, we were talking about this last night, but this is kind of what we're framing this around is like, it feels like bunker tech, right? We're preparing for some world which is and it is getting dicey, and like, but the problem with the kind of privacy sort of community writ large, if you don't mind, it's a bit paranoid, right? It's all a bit moody. And that is not something that people want to worry about. It's anxiety inducing to have to worry about like being surveilled, right? No one likes the feeling of being watched. It's like it's not a fun feeling. So people just avoid thinking about it. So it's not just a challenge of how do we make engaging apps that are going to get the Zoomers to ape into privacy tech or anything like that. It's like there's a fundamental barrier or resistance to the adoption of this technology that's both institutional. There's active institutional desire to like crush this. Like Signal are talking about leaving the UK because they're trying to force them to put client-side scanning into their apps. which they refuse to do. So the interesting thing is, like, we talked about mesh networks there. There's a project here called ReJavaNet, which is talking about building a mesh network for places where they've actually shut off the internet. You mentioned, like, do we have to wait until the state switches off the internet before we care about this stuff? Or do we try and, in peacetime, put down the substrate for freedom of communication and freedom to coordinate that's outside of top-down control? How do we, I think that's the practical reality that we need. What do we need to do as an industry or as a network or whatever to create that event to happen? Like, how do we make these open source? Like, Signal's great and everything, but I might not be able to use it soon because it's banned from the UK. So what am I going to do then, right? We need decentralized versions of these things that don't have a CEO that can just like go away. So how do we do it in peacetime? This is the kind of great sort of question of our era, and like, I think it's a kind of branding thing. It is right. We need to get people believing that this is important, and it is, because if you can't ban VPNs because of things like NIM, right, and if you can't ban messenger chats because they're peer-to-peer and decentralized, and you can't shut down the internet because there's mesh networks, you're less likely to flip into being insane authoritarian nutters, right? Because you just can't do it. So if the capability of like top-down control is not available, then I think it's a good sort of game theoretic equilibrium of society, actually. So yeah, it's an important thing for us to work on, I think.
I strongly agree with the branding side as well. And like, I think like, honestly, changing the words helps. I think it's really hard to go to someone on the street and be like, you should care about like open source directly, because they don't have a direct like image in their head. And like you said, like imagery is very important. And I think parts of you're kind of building like defensive tech, like a Bluetooth mesh network is defense tech. It's a wartime tech. So the question becomes, how do you Trojan horse this in peacetime? And the answer is fun. Like, honestly, we just have to like get very creative. We have this substrate that is like, not going to make any compromises. You can build fun things on top of it. It's not a local LLM. It's your own private AI that lives without the internet. Like, it's like your buddy, or it's like your Nia pet on your phone, whatever it is. Like, there's certain levels of branding that I think we can get a lot of people who might be interested in building something around this to maybe think about, and maybe like work with the tools that exist today to build a front end that rethinks how an everyday person comes in and interfaces with crops. Yeah, like it's one of those things where fun matters a ton. It's hard. You can't really go and like go directly into advertising that you're like, this is more private than the other thing, so you're going to want to use it. There has to be other things as well that people may benefit from. Where it's like, this might be a better experience, or this is an easier way to get your friend on board, or this is a way for you to be able to send money to your friend in another country, or like you have to come up with stories, and then people reverse engineer from that into like what they actually end up associating with.
So I just want to just bring back things a bit down into reality again, because it's great to have fun, but you said you like Signal, right? I also like Signal, and I do not understand why people still use Telegram. Yet people in crypto, even in crypto, which is insane, will tell you that they don't like the UX of Signal, even though personally I just don't see the big difference, but people just will tell you that Telegram is better, etc., blah, blah. And they also do the same thing. They use the proper marketing words. They say we are safe, we are secure. They don't say encrypted, because they are not. But they say that it's a secure messaging app, and it's insane because it is not a secure messaging app, yet somehow people believe them. They have the marketing, they have the money. So what I'm afraid of is, if we rely on privacy, if we try to make it a game, then someone will just copy the thing and start inserting this kind of shortcuts, and make something that's more fun, better, and basically not be a crop anymore. Like just how do you call it? Jump up on the name. But you both mentioned wartime tech, and this is where these things are really, really useful. And maybe so. This is I spend way too much time on this field, and at some point I've just gotten maybe a bit too pessimistic, but maybe indeed that's what we need, wartime tech, and that's it. Like you can't, maybe the masses just don't need it. Maybe we just need to build the wartime tech that will be used by the few now, and when it's needed, then it will be there. If that is the case, which maybe that is the case, like I can't change how people perceive an application, then we would need to think how to fund it, because you can't mass fund wartime tech. Nobody will just say, people in the Western world will just tell you, I don't need this, I don't care. No matter how much you try to convince them, until it hurts them, until they need it. So then we would need to think about how to fund those. And yeah, that's a very big conversation to start about funding crops, basically.
Yeah, I think let's talk about that then. I think for years I've thought we need to get ICOs back, which was like people would look at you like you're a criminal for saying such a thing. And I was there during that time, and it was like I left academia around sort of ICO boom era, and it was like I left being an associate dean at after a 10-year academic career to join the world of crime. It was insane, right? And consequently, people were like, let's never do crowdfunding again because it's just crime, right? And when this was the point of DAOs, this was the whole DAO dream, was that we could raise money into structures that were decentralized and there was some accountability over the money, and people just couldn't rug it and run off, That's what we need to do. There is clearly enough people who care about this to get together and put money into shared resources and fund the important infrastructure that's needed. The problem is that if you try and live off Gitcoin grants or whatever, they're buttons. You can't run the previous panel was talking about privacy tech is expensive, and it is, right? It's expensive to do securely. So the S bit on the end is like, now you're fighting literal super intelligent models, with nation-state actors on the other end of them prompting your contracts to try and rug whatever's in them. So this stuff is not cheap, because you're in a game theoretic war with black hats, and consequently this is not cheap stuff, and we need to get back into doing the actual cypherpunk stuff for me, which was like you do it yourself, right? We've got to find ways. VCs are not going to buy us out. They're not going to fund wartime tech. They're not going to fund crops. They're not going to fund any of this stuff. So implicitly, what we have to do is find paths to just doing it ourselves. New crowdfunding technologies. Start selling NFTs again. Just like do the things. Crypto is good at money. It's good at launching coins. It's good at tokenizing ideas and artwork and stuff like that. It breaks my heart that we're not doing this and raising money for stuff that's important. Instead, it was just the scammers that did it. The good people didn't actually do any ICOs. You've got people like Lefteris and myself and people who've been in crypto for a decade, and we're still grinding away because we didn't do, some scammy shit years ago. And that's the unsettling thing that we need to get out of. How do we build an ecosystem and a culture that does humane and ethical ways of raising money from people who care about the same things, and have that money accountable, and we get things done? That's just the challenge ahead of us, basically.
I think on that, crowd is such a key word that I think this is the best moment ever to index on, is the crowd. How do we feel being here? How does it feel to talk to a person in crypto? Is it optimistic? Is it pessimistic? Is it dreary? Is it exciting? 10 years ago, it was probably very starry-eyed, ICOs, right? It's oh my God, we can do everything, we can rule the world. And now it's not exactly like that. I think there's a general wave of nihilism in the world at large. There's definitely a wave of nihilism in crypto. It's okay, what are we doing here? And I think we can't ever under-index on the crowd part of crowdfunding, on the crowd part of crowdsourcing. How does it genuinely feel if you were to be start from zero, let's say you've never been in crypto before, and you come here to this event and you meet somebody and you talk to them, do you walk out of this being like, fuck, I want to be in this industry? And if not, that's a problem we have to solve. And the way we solve that problem is by having these conversations, is by really opening up and realizing, like, why are we here? What are the values that anchor us? What is the world that we want to build? How does someone who's not here come into our world and want to be here? You know, how friendly are we to that? How optimistic are we about the future? All of these sort of things matter. And I think when you have that, it's like the base layer, right? Like it's like literally ground zero is that crowd. You can then do crowdfunding, then you can do crowdsourcing, then you can do crowd identity and trust and everything else. But until that part is like really cemented, I think that it's hard for us to like be able to anchor. In this way, like I think Crops is interesting, right? Because it allows like, it's a general freedom framework and people can change the terms and obviously do whatever they want with it. But it's like a interesting way for the crypto industry to potentially like anchor itself on a set of things that I think a lot of us like unanimously agree on. Like, but then you know from that agreement comes community. From that community comes like trust, and from that trust comes all these other substrates that we're going to be building on top of it. So I think like crowd is something that I think we all feel in this room. I think we all feel in crypto right now. It's like, okay, how do we bring back this strength? And events like this are really, really important in doing so. I hope everyone here gets to talk to at least 5 new people that you've never spoken to before. I hope you share one optimistic thing with each other, even no matter what. That's what gets us going. That's what's going to keep us going, and that's what's going to get other people to want to also push this forward a bit.
Well, thank you. I think that's a great closing statement for our panel because we're at time. If you want to add something really fast, you can. But otherwise, our panelists will be around if you want to ask questions. Off the couch. And yeah, thank you for a really interesting discussion.